Fix on Me. Welcome to Fix on Me podcast, and today my guest is Ebenezer Quay, aka Pastor Eb, aka Pastor EQ. There's so many names he probably has that he doesn't know, because I call him Pastor EQ. Other people call him Pastor
See,
Eb.
I didn't know that. See, I just learned something today. There you go.
Because I was like EQ,
Yeah, like push the EQ.
Yeah, exactly.
See, I'm with you on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I wanted to have you on this episode, and it was funny because I was telling you earlier before we started recording this episode how I tried to record this episode and it wouldn't happen. So that's how I know it was like God was telling me I had to have you on this one. So this podcast is about vulnerability. It's particularly more about men being vulnerable. Oops, sorry, I forgot to do something. It's all right.
Good.
There we go. So yeah, it's about men being vulnerable with each other, not just, we're married. We're both married. So, our spouses get to see that vulnerable side of us. But when you've developed a relationship with some men or just are around a few men, sometimes they don't see that, So this is what this podcast is about. So it can help other men be able to express their vulnerability and be able to build a solid brotherhood, whoever they connect with. You know what I mean? So, and this episode is regarding, if I remember correctly, it's about overcoming shame of vulnerability and fear about it. So I don't know if you have experience with that, but when I was going through making the outline for each episode, your name popped out for this one. So here we are.
Oh my God.
If you have any tips, any experiences, let's just, get on with it.
Let's just get in on it.
Basically.
Well, the vulnerability thing, that's huge. I know for me is a constant battle. So I can't say like, yo, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
This is what you do. I can say for me, the first thing I can think of is not even realize. Sometimes we don't realize we're not vulnerable.
Right.
Like we think we're vulnerable, but we're not. I know for me, I used to, my heart is on my sleeve and I'm an emotional guy. So I just assumed that meant I was being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I realized, there was a certain level of vulnerability, but to actually express what was happening on the inside of me, I didn't know how to do it. I had no language for it. I felt things were happening.
Yeah.
But that next step of translating how I really feel if something is bothering me to then actually say it was like a huge step for me because I had to acknowledge, I'm not really feeling what's happening right now.
Right.
I don't like it. Whether I'm supposed to like it, whether I have to still deal with it or get through it. That's a big one also with us as men, is we get through it.
Yes, that's the main one. I used to be able to do this. I would say the same thing. Yeah. I used to tell my wife or just people, "Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna get through it. Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna figuring it out."
That's the one. That's the
other one. Figuring it out.
We'll figure it out.
Figuring it out is you're just gonna be in a constant cycle of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Unless you deal with it. That's what I've noticed. Yeah. So, this shame and fear of just men being able to express it with other men, I feel like is breaking. That's finally breaking. You've been a part of it. There's a small group of men that we get together. I wouldn't say to the church because it started out of the church.
Yeah, right.
So, and then, eventually it started growing and growing, and we've been able to, not all of them, but some of the men in that group been able to express their vulnerability and have grown from it. And I feel like have developed the better version of themselves from it. Because, there was people that were still dealing with marriage issues. People were dealing with, let's be real. This is a podcast about vulnerability.
We out here.
Sex, the issue about not being able to be a provider correctly, or certain a bunch of different stuff that they felt like they had to have this facade or this type of, hey, I got it all together. It's okay if you don't.
Right. And
You know,
most of us don't. That's the thing.
that's the thing. Yeah.
Is a lot of times because you look at the next dude, and because we all have the facade up of having it all together.
Yeah.
When you look at another dude and you see his facade, well, you're like, well, he's okay, so I should be okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not been the case at all. Like you hit on a couple of major vulnerability stoppers for men, like being a provider. That's a massive one. I'll speak all up on that. That was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Was because I had an idea of what a provider looked like.
Yeah.
A provider puts food on the table.
Yeah.
And, he just like goes slays buffalo and just brings it in and just throw it on the table. And, like
Here it
it
is.
just boom. And just every week there's more new buffalo on the table. It's like, like that's not what it took a long time for me to understand that isn't, being a provider is more than what you put on the table.
It is
or,
more.
Or
Yeah.
what you put in a bank account, or, spending and all the other stuff. Like it really just is about being present. When I caught that, I was like, well, first, I wish I had known that years ago.
Yeah.
But for me, I didn't have that example because I grew up without my dad.
Yeah. Same. That's same.
Right. So
Most-
same, but yeah, same boat.
I just say most.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a man to show me what it was to be emotionally vulnerable enough to say, we don't have this together. Like the bills are due and we don't have it, and I feel horrible about it.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. It was just, first off, I was raised by my mom. So my mom was very much like, we're going to do what we need to do.
Exactly.
And, when they cry in the hallway, they don't bring you in to see that.
Right. And it's true. I remember my mom having moments where I can hear her, but hearing it just gives you just an effect as much as seeing it.
Right.
And I remember there was moments she would have where she would go in the room and just, cry to herself because we couldn't afford a loaf of bread. You know what I'm saying? Or we couldn't get milk. Or she's like, hey, today all we're going to be able to eat is cup of noodle. You know what I mean? Because I don't have enough to get anything, And then she would have moments where she was upset at my dad. Even, he wasn't around when I was younger, but I don't know exactly what happened there, but I would see the effects of it on my mom.
Yeah.
And I would mostly hear it because I was the type of kid that would stay in the room or grew up watching TV. So,
Same
or,
here.
Be glued on a book somewhere. If I wasn't doing that, I was hanging out with my mom. But other than that, my mom was working a lot. So I will only see her at a few hours at a time. But so most of the time I was basically raising myself. So when I did hear some of her, emotional issues she was going through, or just, the hard stuff she was going through, I was like, okay, when I'm able to get to a certain age, I want to be able to help her out, So I started working at a pretty young age because of it.
We twinning right now.
So, I
Like,
developed I think since I was 16, I got my first job through high school.
I was 15. I
Yeah.
did the exact same thing.
They had like a job workforce type of thing. I think it was like a 10th grade. So all the way from 10, 11, and 12, I was working at what's the name of this? They closed it. They only have one in Long Beach. It's a record store. It's very famous. In Long Beach, they do music videos on it. I can't remember. They used to have one in Watts.
Oh, word.
Literally right there on the 103rd and 103rd and Rosa Park Station, where there's a fitness station now and there's a Denny's there and all that. Or was it Denny's? I can't remember. I haven't been there in a while. But there used to be where the fitness station where the fitness gym is at, that used to be a record store.
Oh,
VIP record store or something like that, I think it was called.
Oh, wow.
It's in Long Beach, but the main one is in Long Beach, and they had one in Watts. So I was working there, and then from that, I developed that, hard work ethic to the point where work was my life.
Yeah.
So, when I got to an adult age and I get married and I'm like, doing different jobs, not being the financial provider like that I know I could have been, or, that I want it to be, not know that I want it to be, you know, like, oh, I want to
Right.
be able to make more than my wife. That was a mentality I had, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until I did get married where I realized that I knew how to work really hard or knew how to hustle, even though I might have not make enough to make the bills. I somehow made enough to make the bills
Yep.
because I was always working, but I wasn't spending time with my wife. You know, I was, you know, and then when my daughter came in the picture, that's when a big mentality shift happened. You know, I was like, I had to figure out how to work smarter, not harder type of thing, and not be a certain type of provider that requires me to be not present all the time. Because I think that's, I understand as a father, as a husband, you have to do that. You have to be able to, you know, provide. And sometimes there are gonna be days where you're working or be gone for a while, but not having my dad around, I was like, I can't do that to my kid myself. You know what I mean? So I had to switch it up a little bit. So
Totally
I
feel
ended
you.
up, just making money different ways. Let's just say that.
I got creative.
Yeah, I got creative. You know, I got creative. Nothing illegal, just got creative. You know, work harder, work smarter, not harder type of deal. And that, um, that relieved so much stress because I was so focused on, oh, I got to get the bag because I got to make sure my wife has a roof, my child has a roof, they have food on the table, that I was becoming very stressed. I was gaining weight like crazy. Now I'm 92 pounds lighter than what I was a couple years ago.
Seeing you working, bro. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I know that provider thing was a big stressor about it, you know. But I'm glad I was able to overcome it.
Yeah, I think that's one for a lot of us men, because the work thing is a huge part of it too. You know, for both
We
of us.
tend to find like identity on it.
That I
Yeah.
was literally about to say, you find your identity in it, especially when you start working young. You think
Yes.
that's very much part of who you are. And at work, you know, when you become a worker to the point where that's all you do, you find that, you know, you don't have to be emotionally present at work. So now I have the habit of just not being emotionally present at this place I spend 8 to 10 to 12 hours at. So I'm out of practice. I don't even know how to be emotionally present in my own life
Yeah.
because I'm just at work all the time, work, 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 work. And then, you know, you get married and you have a child, the responsibility kicks in. So now you're not emotionally present, and you feel like you need to work more because you have more to be responsible for. And we start to take less and less accountability for our emotional health. I'll speak specifically for men.
No, that's true. That's
And so
true.
then we get married and we're like, all I need to do is provide. You know,
Yeah,
all I
and
need to
we're
do is
good.
we're good.
Exactly. No.
As long as there's a roof and this,
No.
that, and the third, we're good. And then, you know, wifey hits you with the like, that's not all I want. And you're like,
Right.
huh?
I want
You,
us to spend time together. I want to be able to go on a travel together, go out the country. I'm
yeah.
like,
I just want to sit down and talk to you. Tell me how you
yes.
feel. And now all of a
Yes.
sudden we're like, I don't even know what that is. I don't have training in that, you know? And, you know, and for us, I think this generation is the first generation of men who have language for this. Because we all, you know, we grew up fathers, you know, 70s, 80s, somewhere in that area. This whole idea of accountability and mental health and emotional
Wasn't really
didn't exist.
not like it does now.
Oh no, it was like, boy, why are you crying? Get
And
up.
I feel like they're just touching the water. There's still a lot more that needs to be revealed.
Plenty more, plenty more. But you know, like even with me and my son now, I have no problem saying, you know, dad is having a bad day today, and you know, I need a minute, or I'll apologize. Like if I'm short, I'm just like, hey, sorry, I shouldn't have come at you that way. I'm real stressed about just being able to say I'm real stressed about as a man is just, it's like 90% of it is just at least acknowledging it and saying it, because
Yeah.
then I no longer have to be ashamed to be stressed. You know, I don't have to feel like I have to have it so together and that my emotions need to be like, wrapped up in a bow. Like I don't have to have it solved to be able to acknowledge there's a problem.
Yes.
Whereas before I was like, I can't even talk about this with her unless I diagnosed it. I know the problem. I got the solution. I've already worked the solution. And then I'm going to come to wifey and say, hey, I was, feeling depressed. I went here. I took this. I do this. It is solved. Now we could talk about it.
Right. And then, no.
No, they don't want that.
Doesn't work that way.
Not at all.
Not at all.
It's,
no, it's funny that you say that, because I think for many years it was the same. As men, we feel like we can fix stuff, and and that's our nature. We want to fix it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if wifey would come to me, I'll try to fix it. If family members would try to tell me something, I'll try to fix their thing too. And then that was just developing more stress. You trying to fix it, trying to figure it out. And that's basically what fixing it means. Is
I'll figure it out.
It's figure it out. It's just another stress increasing thing. It's not until I think I shared this story with in different episodes of this podcast, and it wasn't until 2019, I think, or 2020, where I experienced something that I felt like God's presence after I went through a identity thing where some stuff from work was taken from me, and I like broke down. I was like, I didn't feel like I was completing anything. You know what I mean? Because I was just like, this is all I know to do. Like, now I'm not doing it. So what else am I gonna do? Type of thing. And it was around 3 a.m. I can't remember the date, but I remember 3 a.m. and all I hear is the voice of God telling me thank you. I shared this before.
I remember this, yeah.
And all I hear is him saying, I hear a voice saying thank you. I didn't think it was God. I just hear the voice like saying thank you. And I just started bawling like a kid. I just started crying. And ever since then, when I say my identity is not in what I know to do, it's just a skill and it's just a part of me. It's not who I am.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
it's been so much freedom just in that alone, and
what year did you say that happened? 2019?
I think it was like when did the pandemic start?
Pandemic?
It was late 2019?
It was like 2019 into 2020.
Yeah, right?
This is hilarious. I'm going to let you finish and jump in.
No, go ahead.
No, because, one of my two most vulnerable pivotal moments is one of them was in 2019. Mm-hmm. So 2019, it was August. So it's like the fourth year anniversary. Man, it happened so fast. But I believe it was either 2019 or 2020. I thought it was 2019.
Yeah.
But my identity crisis was acting, because that was what I came out here to do.
Right.
And it wasn't to be a pastor. And I'll never forget, First Lady preached this word called For the Shade. And she talked about, Moses putting his staff down, and then, God told him to put it down, and then God told him to pick it up. And she was like, we're in the season now where God is telling people to put their staffs down. And I knew.
I remember that. I remember that message. Yes.
I knew, because I was in the house when she preached it. I knew what she was saying. I didn't want to hear it. I was like, I got to put this acting thing down.
Yeah.
And I had been doing it my whole life.
Yeah.
So this was a real identity stretch for me. And I didn't want to, because I was scared.
It's a fear thing.
I was like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I got fam to support, and I'm married, I've got kids, and I'm like, how am I gonna go home and be like, all right, the way I make bread,
I'm not gonna do that.
I ain't doing that no more. What?
Yeah.
And so I wrestled with that thing and struggled, and then finally, because I had made up my mind and in my heart, I knew what to do, but the hardest part was telling wifey. Mm-hmm. Because once you tell your wife, like, I know her, she's going to get on board.
Yeah.
So now if she gets on board, I have to do it.
Yeah.
She's not going to fight me, be like, no. And then I can be like, well, God, she fought me on it, so I can keep it, right? No,
right,
I know. Like, once I tell her, it's official. Mm-hmm. So when I told her, she just allowed me to grieve it.
Yeah.
And as men, another part of the reason we're very bad at being vulnerable is we don't grieve
We don't
nothing.
grieve. Yeah.
We conquer and roll.
Yeah. I ain't scared of crying.
Listen,
No man. I'm gonna let y'all know.
We
There's some men that know me that I've cried in front of.
oh
Okay,
man, I have cried like a baby.
Yeah.
But that was one of my huge vulnerable moments, was just being like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I ain't been this way before. Like, you want me to just, because preaching and teaching was not what I knew I was going to be doing. That wasn't it. Like, I was like, okay, I do this because you tell me to, but what else?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, just that. And so I had to.
You're like,
All right. You flew me all the way out here for that? Like, all right. And so that was a huge one, because I had to let that part of my identity go. And I think as men, we have to do that on a regular basis. Like, okay, this is who I think I am. God, who am I really?
yeah.
And all right, I made a lot of bread doing that, but who am I? Not what did I do? Not what am I comfortable with, but who am I? What are you telling me to do? And that's when it's like, oh, okay, that worked for, it'll be things God tells us to do. And it's working, and he'll be like, stop. And we'll be like, what you mean?
Right.
Like, no.
Because we know it's working.
Yep, that season is over. Now I want you to do something else. I want you to be a novice again. I want you to be vulnerable again. I want you to cry again. I want you to come to me again. I want you to be in a puddle on the floor praying to me again. And as a man, to have to let the guard back down after you're comfortable.
Yeah. It's a big thing of surrender. Yeah. But when you do surrender into it, he covers you all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
I think people don't realize
That's
that.
the part I love about God. Ooh.
They don't realize that, because I experienced the same thing. This is before I wasn't an actor, but I wanted to be working in the film business, like either as a cinematographer or a video editor. I even went to school for it.
Likewise.
So doing all that, coming back to LA, it was 2013, 2012, I think. And I get an apprentice job at a Foley studio, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not making money. It was just an apprenticeship, you know what I mean? So I was doing that for 2 years, but I was still working other jobs. I had jobs on the side. Like I said, I'm a very hard worker.
Right.
Like this, I might not be the smartest guy, okay?
Which is not true. Dude,
but my work ethic,
I know.
my work ethic, I could probably overwork a lot of people. But I just don't say it all the time. But but anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But during that time, it was my wife that would pull me to the side. She's like, "Hey, you're so focused on trying to get into the film business. You're like, I feel like you might be missing other opportunities." And I was like, well, that's what I've always had this thing where I was like, well, I want to do what I want to do. It's the passion that I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to change, I guess, I don't know if it's an American thing, but that's how I used to think. And I just kept playing that, what my wife told me over and over again. And then I still wasn't moving a certain way. And then God basically took that away, the Foley thing.
He has to do it that way.
Took it away, and then I had to force myself to go to this job that I did not want to do at all. It was a teaching job, and but I started off as a teacher's aide at an adult school for incarcerated men. So I was working at Twin Towers and MCJ jail here in downtown, and I started off as, like I said, like a teacher's assistant, and I remember telling God, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this for a year, maybe 2.
I love it when we tell God our plan, though.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna still keep applying for other gigs until I find something, And I was applying. And I would get small projects here and there because when you freelance, you get gigs on the side too, but not enough to pay the bills. You know what I mean? Getting into the industry is not easy. No. I feel like you do have to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. But it was a moment of surrender where I think it was 2000. What was it? Was it 2016? I think. Yeah, 2016. And God was like, "You just need to surrender." I was like, "What does that even mean?" You know, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I don't know what that means at all.
Like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? I'm like, I'm over here doing what I'm not happy doing, and that's what it was. I needed to serve to my full excellent capacity in the position that I did not like to do, to experience the full surrender of it. And once I did that, Eb, oh my gosh, when I say I've been covered every year, I'm covered after covering after covering. Even if I'm going through something hard, I'm still covered. And what I'm noticing, if I'm going through something hard, is because I'm realizing that I'm trying to do it my way.
Ooh, oh, that's a man
Because
one right there. We're bad with that one.
God might give you something, it might show you something, you know, and you're doing it, but then you get too comfortable doing it, and then you're like, oh, I can keep doing this, and I'm gonna keep doing it, type of thing, you know, and then you might have a moment it was like, no, you're not supposed to be doing this still, you know. So, but what I mean, it gets so every time you hit a moment, and when you're in your surrender, and you hit a moment where it gets uneasy, I would say uneasy, and then it gets uncomfortable for a bit, and then it gets comfortable. Don't get stuck in the comfortable.
That is it right there.
All right, don't get stuck in the comfortable, because when you get stuck in the comfortable, that's when it gets more uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable, to where you have to do a whole switch on whatever you're doing.
Yep.
You know, a whole switch.
And we want that comfort because as men, we always want to be viewed as stable.
Yes.
And so when we're in that comfort zone, everything is stable.
Because wifey will always be like, you know, I want security. So I was always trying to give what my wife wanted. You know what I'm saying? So I will get comfortable, because I was like, I know how to do this. I'm comfortable in doing this. I know I'm still be a provider doing this. But God is like, mm-mm. So when I did surrender into it, this is how crazy it was. I surrendered into being a teacher's assistant at this job. And a couple months later, probably like 6 months later, oh, we need you to start subbing. I'm like, I don't have a credential for subbing. You know, you need a credential to sub.
That's right.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, you know. And they were like,
that's the parking thing.
oh, shoot, sorry. All right, sorry for the interruption, y'all, but we're back, and my dog Sonic is in it.
Sonic is going to kick it with us for a little bit.
But just to get back into what I was saying about, I was talking about my previous job, and how they were telling me to start subbing here and there, and I did not have a credential. So I was subbing classes, so I was earning more income. And this is after I've surrendered already. And I was like, God, how is this even possible? But it's all right. It's fine. I'll just keep going. I want to ask questions. I'm just going to keep saying yes. So I kept doing it. And then from there, it turned from teacher's aide to substitute teacher. And then from substitute teacher, probably like a year later, not even a year, I would say another 6 months later, I was having my own class. I became a life skills teacher. I was teaching about life skills, anger management, and drug use, and financial management, stuff like that. And it was increase after increase after increase. It's when I fully surrendered into something that I didn't think I could do, basically. You know, I never saw myself being a teacher. I was like, I don't even like talking in front of the people. I don't even like talking in front of the camera. Better yet, hi, Sonic. Yeah. But we definitely gonna have to do a part 2
for sure.
I feel like we have so much more that we want to share. And but what we already shared, I feel like will impact somebody for sure. Anything else you would like to say before we?
One, I'm excited for part 2. I just want to say thanks for opening the space to have me here, and just, Yeah, man. Well, I think the last thing I'll touch on is what you mentioned in terms of we have an idea of how things should go.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big vulnerability note for us men is at the end of the day, it's not about how we think things should be. It's about what God wants to do through us.
Yeah.
And the better we get at that, the easier it will be to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like being vulnerable comes down to, I'll say this, for me, learning what my relationship with God was going to be. My first big cry was in prayer.
Yeah.
And once I learned to cry with God and I learned to listen to him and to obey him, I could be vulnerable because I knew whatever I said or whatever needed to happen, as long as I could talk to him about it, I was going to be good.
Yeah.
So he could tell me it'd be a new version of me I ain't never been before. And he's going to cover me. Even if I made mistakes in that new version of me, he still had my back.
Because you are. Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, oh, okay, I actually can mess up. I actually can do something completely new. And
Because he gives you the grace. He gives you the strength to be able to do it.
yes,
It just because it's new waters, we tend to like, be hesitant or be afraid or have some type of shame. Like I'm doing something I'm not comfortable doing. But the uncomfortableness is going to develop you into a better person.
Yep.
Every step of the way.
yeah,
And when you surrender into that, it gets comfortable. It gets easier eventually. But then be prepared, because that means there's going to be another season of uncomfortableness, but not strenuous, not hard, as long as you surrender. Because if you try to do it yourself,
yep.
that's when it's extremely hard, because he gives you the grace to do it yourself. But it's just like, no, I told you this is how this podcast happened.
Yeah, I love this story. Have you told this story on the pod?
I don't know if I have.
Bro.
It was given to me 2 years ago.
Come on.
And I had a whole thing. I had a co-host. It was one of my friends. I still talk to him to this day. And I wasn't trying to make it perfect or anything, but I was trying to make it comfortable for me to do, and it just never happened. And then it was like a full circle moment. I think my wife told me, like, shared this video talking about like U-turn season. She saw it was somebody giving a message. And I was just like, okay, this podcast thing keeps coming up again. But at this time, I was already like learning how to do this virtual production stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'll try to bring my friend on again. And God was like, no, like I told you.
Right, by yourself.
Exactly. You need to do it by yourself. And I was like, no, I don't like being in front of the camera at all, But here we are. And some of the conversations, each episode has a really good conversation.
Yeah, man.
Because God gave me, I had outline. I have 8 or 9 episodes, and then I had a list of people that I can reach out to, and I was prepared to do this by myself, but everybody that I reached out to said yes. So that's how I know God put his thing on it. And also any issue that I encounter technical wise or just scheduling wise with people, somehow God made it work at the end of the day, So I'm just excited to see what else comes out of this, So stay tuned for part 2, y'all. Thank you for being on the episode. I know we cut it short because some things we had to do.
That's all good.
We got to take care of, but we will be back and record a part 2, y'all. So
Absolute.
peace. Till next time.